Thanks for joining us today. I am Yuki Onoen at Oblon at Oblon Farm. I have a housekeeping note for you. First and foremost, please use the online question tool to post any questions that you have throughout the presentation. Second, if you have any audio-visual problems during the presentation, please let us know by using the online question tool, and we'll do our best to resolve the questions. And finally, just to note, the recording of this session and the accompanying slides will be posted online. We will send you a link to all webinar attendees. I am Yuki Onoi. I am a chemical partner at Oblon Farm, and we have the webinars in two sessions. First, James Love is going to give you a background information on the artificial intelligence and software in general. And I will get into more software as a medical device and use of the software in the pharma practice. And Kelly was not able to come to join us at the webinar. He had a family emergency, so we apologize for it. Now I'd like to introduce James Love. He's my colleague and friend at Oblon Farm. He's a partner in electrical practice at Oblon Farm. He is very active in preparing prosecuting applications in computer science, medical device, artificial intelligence. He also teaches at law school, George Mason, so I'm sure you'll find his presentation very helpful and interesting. James, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you, Yuki. As Yuki said, my name is James Love. I'm a partner in the electrical mechanical group, and I do a lot with medical devices and artificial intelligence and software. So let's go ahead and get into the beginning of our presentation. So I want to first start, before we get into the details of Pharma, which Yuki will handle, just talking about artificial intelligence and how that's affected the medical area as well as the medical device area. So I think we all know that artificial intelligence is a very popular area that a lot of people are involved in recently, and it really has revolutionized the medical device area. Even more than what we've seen in the pharma area, we've seen that artificial intelligence really has been utilized and implemented in the medical device area. And this is through kind of two ways. One is through the implementation of Internet of medical things, so devices that generate big data, which is necessary for artificial intelligence, and also through the use of software, which has really become more integral to medical devices than ever was in the past. So let me start by first talking kind of an overview of what artificial intelligence is. So there's kind of three high-level layers of artificial intelligence, one being deep learning, then machine learning, and then a neural network. To give a kind of very short explanation of what each of these are, we like to think of neural networks as the computer architecture that implements the artificial intelligence. This is the kind of the machine that artificial intelligence is running on. So machine learning, on the other hand, would be the program which is running on this neural network, which implements the artificial intelligence. Finally, deep learning, which is a very specific type of machine learning, which uses big data. And what you're going to see most likely for artificial intelligence in the medical area and in the pharma area is that deep learning will be involved. So if we think at a very high level about what is artificial intelligence, it's really, we're trying to show computers how to do something instead of just telling it what to do. So typically, the way it has always been in the past is that computers are told how to behave through programming or actions. And the revolution that has happened in computing is that artificial intelligence has allowed computers to learn how to actually know how to do something or make decisions. And as we talked about, that's through machine learning, this program that will teach a computer how to behave. And we might ask, well, how is the computer taught how to behave? So we have different kinds of machine learning. We have supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised machine learning. Each one of these are different ways in which the computer is taught how to make decisions and how to decide things. It does this using statistical models, or in effect, a model or a group of data that allows it to make predictions on some information using a group of data that's obtained using, for example, a large data set from medical devices or a huge data set through an internet of medical things. This computer is taught how to make decisions and behave almost like a human brain. So I want to start by talking about some AI that has been involved in medicine, which we know in medical devices, especially segmentation of organs, there's been real huge advances in utilization of AI. So before AI, it was sometimes very difficult to detect the boundaries of an organ or to distinguish the organ from the background in, for example, CT images. Because of AI, there's been huge advances, and it's been much easier for doctors or medical professionals to operate in this area of medicine. There's actually a whole lot of areas that AI has really taken leaps and bounds in the recent few years, especially in the last 5 or so years. So we're able to do all sorts of things, such as things that you wouldn't expect that we would be able to do, such as detect depression, detect diseases, have prognosis for diseases, detect time of death. There's all sorts of things that we're able to use AI for. And Yuki will get into a little bit more detail about how the pharma area, which has not always been on the forefront of AI, is starting to use AI to develop all sorts of different things. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the Internet of Medical Things. And we talk about this because it's important for AI, for artificial intelligence to work. It needs data, especially as we mentioned before. If you have this neural network and you want there to be able to make decisions, it needs to be trained, and it's trained through using big data or large data sets of information. So the Internet of Medical Things is an infrastructure of network medical objects, and there are a lot of examples of this sort of thing. We have examples such as the Apple Watch is being used to make decisions about all sorts of things, and even new things that are coming out every day that it can be used for. And these type of devices that can get information from a large group of people are exactly what's needed in order to operate AI. We have these smart medical devices that operate and collaborate with each other and generate this data that's needed. So we ask, well, how does this work together? And I've kind of mentioned it, but AI needs big data, and big data can be operated through IoT. So you have Internet of Things, you have Internet of Medical Things. These type of small devices that generate data are absolutely necessary to create this database learning that AI operates on. So now that we know a little bit about the background of AI and IoT, we need to think about what issues may arise. And there's a lot of issues, of course, that can come up, but we have identified 4 here that we think will be interesting to talk about and useful to talk about because they're really on the forefront of the issues that arise. So one of the areas that I think is probably the most interest for a lot of people at this moment is inventorship. So we have this question of, can AI-enabled machine, can artificial intelligence invent something? And we have, of course, the famous case that happened in Europe where I think it came from the UK, the Davos project, where you had a device or a computer program or an AI program that came to invent something, and they took it to the EPO and they asked, can we have an AI as an inventor? And the EPO said no. And in fact, you can't patent this because there's not a human inventor involved. So the US has taken a little bit of a different approach in this area. So the PTO also has said no, that inventors are limited to natural persons. So machine cannot qualify as an inventor under US law. So we know that the PTO, the link there below, has provided guidance on this that says this. But I think from the PTO's perspective and from discussions with the director on this issue, we think that in the case, the European case that I just talked about, there would still be a human inventor. So even though AI may be considered the device that came up with the idea or the design, there was some human that was involved in the process. So there was a human that set the AI to operate. There was a human that put in the input. There was a human that programmed the AI. So from the PTO and the US's perspective, there's still humans involved even in that situation. And the director famously noted in January of this year, he doesn't see any example so far that AI has invented something that would be considered an inventor under US law. So of course we know this is going to change in the future, and who knows where we could get at some point. But as of right now, the consideration in the US is that inventors are limited to natural persons, and there's always going to be some human that's involved in the inventorship process. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about 101, abstract idea rejections. We all know that the famous case of Alice for CLS that really opened up the 101 issue in the software area. And of course, AI is software. So we know there's going to be potential issues with abstract ideas, with any type of, when you have software, any kind of issue, mental processes that will cause problems for these type of inventions. We know that medical AI and IOMT the software is vulnerable. We've seen that, but we've also seen that it's become easier in the past, in particular, to get these type of inventions because of changes at the Patent Office. We know that the Patent Office is really interested in making sure that they can help AI go forward. We know it has been indicated by the director that AI is an important area that in the US economy and in the future of technology. And so the Patent Office wants to be involved in that, and they don't want to be in a position to stop people from obtaining AI patents. So even though the abstract ideas are always an issue, we think that currently the Patent Office is very favorable to applicants in this area. Another area, of course, is that when we talk about artificial intelligence and big data, is that we need to obtain data. We need to collect data in order for the artificial intelligence to operate properly. And we have a kind of famous case that caused a lot of problems at the Patent Office, especially after it came out, which is the Electric Power Group case. This case kind of stood for the proposition that just gathering and analyzing information or data and displaying results was not enough to be considered inventive or to overcome the 101 hurdle. So this case is always a problem for AI cases, especially if we're considering the data aspect, the incoming part of AI. This could be something that needs to be considered and can always continue to be an issue, even in light of the Patent Office's more positive view towards AI cases. So we have, of course, as I kind of alluded to a second ago, a new guidance, and at this point, it's not very new. It's almost 2 years old, but we have this guidance that was changed really the way that we looked at 101 cases at the Patent Office. So this revised guidance that came out in January of 2019 created these specific groups under prong 1, mathematical processes, mathematical concept, mental processes, methods of organizing human activities such as business methods, and then had this second prong that could overcome these abstract idea issues, which is the practical application. And we know that examiners follow this guidance very closely, more closely than case law, and the Patent Office even has provided examples directed to AI and medical records, which have helped us in this area obtain patents in the AI area. What's important to kind of note here is that just because you're able to obtain something at the Patent Office, and just because you're able to overcome 101 at the Patent Office, doesn't mean that the courts will behave the same way. We've had a couple of examples now where courts have said, look, we have this guidance from the Patent Office, but it's only guidance. This is not something that we have to follow, and they have not followed. So if you ask me, I would say that it's easier to obtain an AI patent at the Patent Office than necessarily through the courts. And when I don't mean obtain through the courts, but have the case challenged in the courts. And although there's not a famous AI case that has gone to the courts yet, we suspect that there could be problems in the future in this area. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about enforcement. We know that when we're talking about IOMT or artificial intelligence, often there's activities of multiple parties that are involved. So if we think about it, there could be someone that is involved or is designed or operates the sensor that obtains the data. We also know that there is probably a server involved somewhere and someone could be running that. And we also know that there's going to be an interface, probably a software interface, and that could even be operated by someone else. So if you think about all these multiple parties and infringement, we could have problems about actually enforcing this patent. If your patent is written in a way that requires all of these different elements. So one thing that we might have to look back on is, well, do we have to use contributory infringement? Would we have to rely on joint infringement? And these are areas that obviously you can rely on for enforcement, but you don't want to rely on these. These are much more difficult than a typical enforcement action. So if possible, when we're drafting patents in this area, we want to think about how can we avoid writing our patents in a way that would result in us having to rely on contributory infringement or joint infringement. So some of the claiming strategies would be to claim, from one perspective, for example. So you would try to think, if we can claim this from only the sensor perspective or maybe only the server perspective, this will help us enforce these patents much more effectively. So if I think about if this is our invention, we have the internet or a network involved, we have all kinds of end user devices, sensors, we also have servers. Can we think about claiming this in a way that looks at it only from the perspective, for example, of the input and the output? And not claiming the specific parts of the network, but maybe inferentially claiming these elements. So another big issue in AI has always been patent versus trade secret. So historically, a lot of AI is done with software in a black box. And when this is done, it's not always clear that a patent is the best way to protect this invention. We have these potential layers. We have an output layer, we have an input layer, we have these hidden layers, and it's not always clear how the operation of this is, especially from the end user. Let's say you have a competitor and they're trying to look at the AI software that's being used, and they might not even have access to it. This may be on a server somewhere. This may not be easily reverse engineered in any way. As a result of this, there's a lot of investment caused in training and building neural networks, but it might not be something that you want to protect via patent. And as I noted, it may be difficult to actually enforce your patent if you obtain it, because it's not easy to determine if the competitors are actually doing it. Now, I will say that one area that I've heard recently is that potentially AI could be used to reverse engineer things. So where in the past maybe it may be difficult to detect that something is running in a certain way, AI could potentially even be used to do this detection. But at this point, we're really not there. So when people are thinking about AI and thinking about the balance between patent and trade secret, I think you have to be careful to consider this and think about if you're claiming something to try to claim it from a perspective or a way that it can be detected very easily. So, and of course, the more AI patents are out there, the more difficult it will be to actually write patents in this way or write claims that can be patentable and would be able to be easily detected. So this gives kind of the background about AI and about where we are now when we're thinking about using AI in pharma. And so now Yuki will be talking about how this can be operated as software as a medical device. Just to give a very brief introduction of Yuki, as she indicated, she's a partner in our chemical group. She's also the head of our Tokyo office. And she has a lot of experience in the pharma area and has been working with a number of companies and really has good perspectives in this area. So I'll let you go ahead, Yuki. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I'm actually calling in from the Tokyo office, so I'm kind of alone here, but I'm happy to be connected with you all. So the software as a medical device, what is it? So I have the definition here. This is a definition by the International Medical Device Regulators Forum in 2013. The forum issues a document, and then you can see this definition. So it's a software for medical purpose. So it's for treatment, for alleviating pains and diagnosis. So it's not software for general use. Also, another key point here is that it's not software in a medical device. It's a software as a medical device. So it's you can see as a software standalone application, and it's not part of the hardware, and that can be used for helping the patient. And the second thing I presented here is the language that I borrowed from the FDA website. So since we're talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning, what does it do to the software? So it gives the software the capabilities to be more adaptive. It can be changed as the system learns, and it could optimize the performance as a medical device, and it could provide potentially more personalized care and support for the patient. Okay, so I wanted to give you an example of software as a medical device. I have Reset, and there's also Reset-O approved by the FDA. It's developed by Pear Therapeutics. So they call it prescription digital therapeutic. This application is for the patient with substance use disorders. So you as a patient can use this software at home between the visits to the doctor's office. So the doctor can give you as a patient a counseling session. You interact with the doctors, but at home you're alone, but you still need support. So this software has been designed for this purpose, and it's an addition to the traditional treatment by the medication, and it's like it's a supplement to the treatment. And I have presented here from the chart from the Pear Therapeutics. So we have been developing small molecules for the drug, and then we have, of course, the biologics from 1980, and then we have moved on to cell gene therapies. So the Pear Therapeutics consider this PDT as sort of a next drug or the active ingredient kind of thing for the treatment. So if you think about the regulation perspective, how do you regulate this new thing? It's software, as James mentioned. It's if it's AI involved, machine learning involved, it's more adaptive. It can be changed, it can be updated, it changes as the system learns. So how do you regulate that? It's not a tangible medical device that the FDA has been regulate. So what should be the balance? You would want to give the public access to the latest technologies, but also the FDA would also want to have the safe device to the market for the public. So there has been a lot of discussions in the International Medical Device Regulators Forum, have been issuing documents, guidance documents, including their discussions on the policies, how you want to harmonize the regulations around the world. So the forum is a group of the ministries from different countries, the European, Japanese ministry, and Canadian FDA, of course. So if you are interested in those more regulatory framework, those documents are on their website, so those should be an interesting read. Okay, so I'm more on the patent side, so I'd like us to think about a situation how, when, why we want a patent on the software as a medical device. So we like to think about a situation where a patent owner, a pharma, let's say big pharma company, a brand name company has an existing drug, and then the company can think of trying to make a combination product with the existing drug and then the software. So the company can, for example, invest a lot in-house. Also, you could partner with venture companies, with university professors who have been working on AI technologies, and then you run clinical trials, testing those software to see whether the use of the software gives more benefits to the patients than the use of the drug alone. So once you figure out something is promising, then you consider filing applications on the combination product. So as James mentioned, there are lots of patenting issues, inventorship, and then descriptions, etc. But we could think about more on the later side. So if you're successful in getting a patent on software as a medical device, now is the time for enforcement. And how it works is that you want to describe the use of the software in a drug label. So the existing drug just uses as administering the drug, but you want to say that you're using the software as a treatment, the supplement. And then how it works is you, as a big pharma company, you are required to list the relevant patents related to the drug. So in this case, also you would need to list the patents on the Orange Book. And for a generic company, they would need, if they're interested in getting into the market, to provide the generic equivalent to the drug, the reference drug, then the generic firm would file an abbreviated new drug application. And in terms of the label, that would be essentially the copy of the reference drug's label. So since we have the drug label by the pharma company that has that mentions the software use, so the generic proposed label would mention the software use also. And then I mentioned carve out here because what happens is if the software can be used for all indications, then for the generic form, you can't really provide the generic equivalent and then ask for approval for non-infringing indication. That's called carve out. But if the software can be used for all indications, then that's no carve out situation. So for a big pharma or for the brand name company, that would be the better situation. So in terms of the enforcement, the theory here is that it's the induced infringement. So the statute, the 271E2, provides that the submission of the ANDA by the generic farm is an act of infringement. So it's like a hypothetical infringement. It's not infringing yet because the product, the generic equivalent product, is not on the market yet. It's just application to the FDA. But this application and application submission is the act of infringement according to the statutes. So that's statutory, that gives a cause of action for a pharma company, the brand name company. Then the generic label, as I mentioned, is essentially a copy of the reference drug label. So it recommends using the software that the brand name company obtained a patent on. So it actually recommends encouraging the infringing act based on the use of the label. So the label itself could be evidence of the affirmative intent to induce infringement. So this is a theory that would be favorable if that's applicable to the situation. In terms of the relief, the statute provides that there is an injunction possible against the approval of the ANDA. So if there's no approval on it, the generic farm cannot bring the generic copy of the product. So you can stop the market entry based on the induced infringement if you're successful. I have 2 slides on the challenges. So we like to think about the challenges in preparing and prosecuting applications on the combination product. So if you think about, there's a software aspect to it, of course, because it has the AI and machine learning involved. And also it has a chemical or pharmaceutical practice that needs to be considered. So just be aware that these practices are not quite the same. You need expertise in both areas. So James would be able to support you on the more software aspect. So you can advise on what kind of descriptions you would need for the algorithm, how it works, what kind of software, hardware that needs to be there. Me as a chemical, more pharma person, I could think about whether you want to have a data looking at the clinical trials. You don't necessarily need the raw data, but you don't want to summarize too much because you're losing some information from the clinical trials. Sometimes the data can help you how to recite the claims. And so the drafting application, of course, in any technologies is challenging, but in terms of this combination product, since it has the software and the chemical aspects to it, it's even more important that you would consider the more special problems that are unique to the software and chemical pharma practice. And as a global company, I would think that you would want to have an application that is drafted perfect way for meeting the requirements in all kinds of countries like Japan, Europe, US, and the clients ask us very often what's the best way to meet all the requirements. In terms of the combination product and AI, the Japanese patent office has provided some guidance, the information. They have the examination handbook, and they have included some examples in the AI-related technologies, how they viewed, how they would examine those applications. And I actually studied on the examples, and you could read them also. It's not in Japanese. It has a Japanese version and English version, so you can study those. So they have provided their views on the inventive step, also the written description enablement type of things also. So it's a helpful thing for US or European or other areas practice. Also, they have hypothetical claims in there, so and then you can go through. It's like a US 101 guidance document that has examples, so you can think of how your case would be close to that examples. So I have published an article on it, so I wanted to mention that. In terms of the claiming, I would recommend having different sets of claims. So it's rare to see these days having 3 independent claims in one application, although the PTO is not going to give you additional charge for it. But this complex technologies, I would think that it would be helpful to have independent claims written in different ways. Since the PTO hasn't provided any specific guidance yet, I mean, the trend seems to be that they are going to allow more application software type of things. They want to be favorable to it if it's not too abstract, but we don't know exactly what their policy is right now. So I would recommend having different independent claims, different sets of claims written different ways, using different languages, and then broad to narrow. In a pharma practice, you don't necessarily need all the broad claims. The narrow claims and more specific pinpoint claims could be beneficial when your patents are challenged. So I would try to have different claims in different scopes. And for 101, I would try not to use the words that are like a diagnosing or evaluating, analyzing, that could be done in a human mind, because that's like a mental step, trigger words. So I would try to avoid it. 112, the industry commentary that I've read so far, it seems to be the general sense is that the level of details that you want for AI involved invention should be similar to other computer implemented technologies. And of course, if you are using very unique processes, like you have trained the neural network in certain ways, you used different layer structures, you have done some interesting pre-processing or post-processing of the training data, things like that. You want to describe it, or at least you want to have some examples in the specification, like in the chemical practice. I think that it's my view, but I think that it should be allowed to have some unknown mechanism, like in the chemical. We need to describe the steps that you take in the manufacturing process, for example, what you did to get the results, but you don't necessarily need to describe the mechanism, because you don't know sometimes. So just like that, you want to have the structure of the algorithm described in certain ways, but I don't think you necessarily need everything in the description and the specification. But those are the things that we should be thinking about as we go on working on the AI-related inventions. Okay, so during the prosecution, one thing to be aware of is that you need to amend. Sometimes you need to amend claims because you have come across with you have the rejections in front of you, and but as I said, the label needs to mention the software used if you're claiming the method of treatment, and then a claim needs to match with the label for the enforcement purpose. And at the same time, let's say if the regulatory team tells you the label language is fixed, then how are you gonna amend the claims and get a patent on your fixed with the claim language because of the drug label fixed for the regulatory purpose? So the challenge here is that, of course, at the time of preparing the application, you want to have various languages that can be used in the future so that you have flexibility in describing your treatment method, for example. And it's very hard to predict what you would need during the prosecution, but just you need to be aware that when you're drafting application, you kind of want to foresee what kind of issues you may face in the future in front of the PTO. And then at the time of the prosecution, I have seen this happen, but you want to work with the regulatory people that just to coordinate and try to have the patent claim match with the label. And in terms of the examination policy from the PTO, we have the AI page, artificial intelligence page on the PTO website. Right now, you can see the petition decision on the inventorship issue that James mentioned. So that's interesting to read. You have also, you can see the public comments from different entities like AIPLA, AIPPI, IPO, in response to the PTO's request for public comments last year on the page. They have also some events last year, some resources, but there's no specific guidance yet, except for maybe the example 39 that James mentioned, that it's sort of helpful to understand how the PTO might examine the AI-related invention. So you want to sort of monitor how the examination policy would be developed at the PTO. For the regulations, so FDA has provided the pilot program, I believe, this year. So it's called Pre-Certification Pilot Program, and it is designed for, tailored for, it's a proposal for the new approval process for the software as a medical device. They recognize that the traditional approval process is sort of old and not good for the software as a medical device. So they have proposed pilot program, and they have been working with volunteer companies. They have selected some companies, including the paratherapeutics. And then they have been receiving comments, and they're working with these companies. They have been working with the companies, and this month I have seen their update document, so it might be interesting to you if you're into regulatory framework. I believe that they are thinking about mechanism of allowing the software company to submit a plan for how they would modify the software if something happens. So they recognize that the software can be modified and updated. It's different from the traditional medical device. So the way they thought about is to allow the company to submit the plan for the future. If something happens, we will do this to modify, and then we'll report this to FDA, something like that. And then they're testing it. I think they're in a testing phase, and then they will test and then modify. And then this update document from this month has a roadmap for the future activities, and I don't think they have the timeline or the goal, so we don't know for sure when this pilot program will be the regular permanent program, but you can see that the FDA is working on something tailored to the software as a medical device, and certainly the FDA has been working in alignment with other regulatory entities around the world in accordance with the documents issued by the forum that I mentioned. So these things, the patent examination policy, and then the regulations and the business issues, those need to be all considered together. So these will be everything that you need to be considering when you're trying to use the artificial intelligence for the pharma practice. So that will be it. Thank you.
Okay, so there are some questions. So I will go ahead and read them off, and some of them probably are for me and some would be for you. So I'll ask one since you're right there, some questions for you. So one of the questions is, can you talk about areas that AI will be used in pharma and potential new areas in the future?
So the area that is very popular, I would say it's the drug discovery. So as you all know, the drug discovery is time consuming, and then you need to test all kinds of the safety and efficacy, and then you need to collect data. And so the venture companies, there are about, I believe, 200 companies out there. Smaller companies are working on it, so they're in the market, and then the big pharma companies are looking into partnering with these venture companies. So drug discovery is very big, and I have seen machine learning or more like a data mining technologies used in analyzing the data from clinical trials. So you have a bunch of data from clinical trials, and as a human, maybe you can use some analytical tools to evaluate and get some meaningful result from it, try to understand how the effects have been on different patients. But the data mining or this kind of system can help you to find a new pattern, for example. So the AI and machine learning type of thing is something that when you don't know the factors and the patterns, I think that's the best way to use it. If you know the pattern and just use it for automation, that's just a general computer function. But AI and machine learning, they can, well, machine learning, you need to put the data to learn, but more independent analysis, if the AI can find a pattern that you haven't seen it, then you can sort of identify the special patient group with certain markers. Then you can see that maybe this drug is effective for treatment for this particular group of patients. So that might be something that I think that has been used, and that is very effective way to utilize the artificial intelligence. In terms of the diagnosis, of course, the imaging technologies are using the AI in the learning processes, so that should be being used and will be used more often, I think.
Okay. All right, so let me ask the next question. I think this one's for me. It says, why are you so confident that a machine will be able to hold a patent, or are you? In response to this, I don't necessarily think at the PTO that at this moment a machine will be able to hold a patent and a machine will be able to be an inventor. In fact, it's pretty clear that there would have to be a change in the law for that to allow it to be happen currently. However, I do think two things. One, the PTO is interested in ensuring that AI inventions are able to be patented. So I think they're doing this through looking at who the humans are behind the AI and maybe indicate them as the inventors. But there could be some point in the future where that's not really possible. And if that's the case, I think there would have to be a change in the law. And I think that the change would happen, the push would happen because there would just be so much interest, from companies that are involved in this to make sure that their inventions can actually be patented. So if this was going to happen in the future, there would have to be a change in US law. Now there's, a whole idea that potentially there could be a constitutional issue also, right? Depending on how you look at it. But if there wasn't a constitutional issue, maybe it could be that the inventors could be someone who's involved in the process, or potentially even if there's no constitutional issue, we could have a change in the law that would allow that. So I don't know, Yuki, if you had any thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, so in terms of the inventorship, I have seen a commentary saying that right now the technology is not there, the level of having AI independently invent something, but in the future, somebody mentioned that might be a case. For the JPO's invention definition, it has to be highly advanced creation of technical ideas. So ideas need to be conceived, and I don't think they're ready to make the change to include the machine inventing something.
Right.
So I don't think from the Japanese Patent Office perspective, that could be a challenge to include the inventorship, to include the machine.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of the main way things are going at the moment, that most, the EPO, the JPO, the USPTO, most people are considering machines to not be inventors. So we'll see where it goes in the future, but we think for now, that's how it's going to be. Okay, so let me ask another question I have here. Can you talk about why pharma potentially has been behind in the use of AI as compared to other areas of technology? Maybe you can take that one, Yuki.
Yeah, I think that possibly, since I mentioned the regulatory framework that needs to go through when you're developing pharma technologies, and you need to have the safety concerns. So you need to submit all kinds of data. It can't be black box development. You don't know how this this happened, this was done by AI. You can't do that. So to incorporate the AI technologies and still satisfy the regulatory requirements, that might be the challenging that needed additional work to incorporate the AI and machine learning to the pharma practice.
That makes sense. Okay, so another question is, will the PTO issue guidance in the AI area? So I'll take the first shot at this. I think the PTO will eventually issue guidance. I know Europe has issued guidance. I think you mentioned Japan has issued guidance. I'll let you talk about that in a second. But the PTO has been very active in this area. We've had conferences here. They have issued some 101 guidance that has an example related to AI. So I wouldn't be surprised that at some point in the future, the PTO will issue such guidance. I think AI is just such an important area that it's bound to happen. That's what I would say. But maybe Yuki can talk about JPO.
Yeah, so the examination handbook examples, they're related to AI, and they have talked about the specific requirement or the preference to include the correlation or some information or data to show that there is a correlation between input-output data for the training data set. So that is actually specific. I thought that's very specific. So they have been working on this AI issues for years, and I have presented in Japan here, and the Japanese examiners have asked questions, exactly the same question. Is the USPTO going to do something about the examination policy? And that I said maybe, but that was earlier this year, so everything has been held on, postponed, I guess. But I'm sure that PTO doesn't want to be the one holding off for forever, and they want to support the innovation, and then they don't want to be late in taking action. So I would think that the preference is that they would issue some kind of document or some kind of announcement that they are working toward providing the policy, I would say.
Okay, I think that's all of the questions. So I'll say thank you very much. We appreciated being here today. And of course, you can always contact either of us at our emails that are on the screen with any other questions that you might have after this webinar. So thank you.
Thank you very much.